Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to All Access Live. I am John Samuel, and today we have a very special guest. We have my friend Alisa Herr from Unity Web Agency, who is actually one of the very first folks I got to meet in the digital accessibility space here in the Triangle area. So, welcome, Alisa. How are you?
Thanks. It's good to be here. I really appreciate you having me on your show.
No, it's been. I'm surprised it's been so long because, like I said, you were one of the very first people who I met when I got started in digital accessibility that really like got it and
Yeah.
was doing something about it. And so I think that how I met you was actually I was reaching out to the RTP Foundation to talk about digital accessibility, and they're like, "Oh, we're making our website with accessibility in mind,"
Yeah.
and that's how I got connected with you.
Yeah.
So.
And then we bumped into each other at a disability job fair. It wasn't really a job fair, but it was like a job expo kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Some
Um,
booths and stuff in the
yeah.
Frontier building. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah, you came down and that became a very, beginning of a great friendship and relationship. So I'm excited that you're here. But as I mentioned, like it was so interesting in 2018 when I was talking about digital accessibility to find somebody who was actually doing something about it. So like how did you how did you get into web design and then even just thinking about accessibility as something
Yeah.
to do?
Well, it's surprising we haven't actually talked about this before. I don't
No.
think we have. So my background is in web development, and I actually my dad, when I was in middle school, taught me HTML. And
Mhm.
I was using like Front Page and Notepad and all these things like back in the 90s, basically designing my own little websites.
Oh,
And
cool.
it was a hobby of mine, but like as a woman or as a girl at the time, there was not it wasn't like, oh, this is a career path. Um, but so it was something that I always did on the side. I remember in college making websites for friends. I had a friend that was a race car driver, and so I
Oh,
made websites
nice.
for him. And I made websites for clubs I was in, things like that. Um, but I ended up getting my undergraduate in psychology and then going to graduate school for library science.
Where'd you
And
go to
when I
school?
was I went to undergrad at Appalachian State, and then I went to UNC Chapel Hill for my graduate degree.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So then in library school, I again was doing websites for like on the side, and also for different jobs that I had, like with the library system. I would redesign a website or code a little thing for a website. And
Yeah.
um, when I graduated, it was 2009, and there were no jobs. Like there was the hiring freeze in North Carolina. I wanted to
Yeah.
stay here in North Carolina because I grew up here, and my family's here. My husband's family is here, and we wanted to stay local. We love the state.
Yeah, of course.
So um, I ended up having a part-time job working minimum wage uh, at Barnes and Noble, and was looking for something to use like my skills. I'm like, I have a master's degree. Why can't I get a job? Um, and so I ended up finding a job at a web development agency, a web design agency. And I was part time. I had no like professional experience with it, but I was part
Yeah.
time. They took me on, just kind of gave me a chance. And within 6 months of me starting, the other developer had left. So it was
Okay.
my sink or swim moment in my career where I just knew I had to I had to figure it out.
Yeah.
If I didn't, they were going to hire somebody over me, and that would be it.
Yeah.
So I stepped up. By the time I left that company 4.5 years later, I was the lead developer and oversaw a team of like 3 or 4 other developers.
Oh, wow.
And I left that job to go to Education NC, which is a local media startup, or not a startup. It was at the time. It was a
Yeah.
startup when I joined, and it was a media nonprofit focusing on public education in North Carolina.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was the CTO of at NC as it got off the ground and founded. And I was, as part of my job, was building the platform, and it's a it's a news website basically. And the other half of that job was going around the state and just touring different elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and looking at what kind of STEM initiatives they were doing. And I just loved seeing how different schools were making, like, for kids that I felt like I still had
Yeah.
a very big part of my inner child coming out at these moments thinking, man, I wish that this stuff was around when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Um, Around that time, my husband actually was diagnosed with MS. And his family has always been very much in the disability advocacy world.
Oh, wow.
Two of his sisters have disabilities, and his mom actually went to law school as an adult to try to get some clout, I guess, for her disability advocacy work.
Oh,
And
wow. Yeah.
so Matt went to law school and also has been working in the disability advocacy
Yeah.
space. And so I think it runs in the family. But while I was working at this nonprofit that was a news website, it really became clear to me how important it was that websites be accessible to everybody, because the information that's on there, I mean, a news website is all just information. And I started learning about website accessibility when I was there. So when I left that company or that nonprofit to found my own company, I really wanted to get back away from journalism.
Yeah.
Writing is not my forte. I can do it, but it's a struggle. It's hard. But I wanted to get back into the space of like working with multiple clients. And I thought, I've learned about accessibility. I want to bring it to the masses. I want to be able to serve other nonprofits, other businesses, and help their websites become accessible. And that was in 2016. There wasn't a whole lot about it at the
Yeah.
time. I did go to a few events when I was at EdNC that were, there was a really cool disability, like STEM and disability and careers, kind of an event at the Science Museum in downtown Raleigh. And there was a panel, and they just had different people with disabilities talking about how they got their careers in STEM. And it was just really cool. That was the first time I ever really got a glimpse into like, okay, accessibility is a thing. So that was a while ago.
Yeah, no, I know that event well because those were one of the very, very first few events I used to go to when I started, LCI Tech. I'd
Yeah.
go to the STEM events and sit there with a booth and a little table and try to talk about accessibility. So that's super cool. I mean, there's so much that you went through that I have lots of questions because
Mm-hmm.
one of those things is you went to school, to do your master's in journalism, right? But then to get, you took a hobby you dabbled in to then become, to that sink or sink moment, the swim or sink moment you had. I think a lot of people struggle with that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what was going through your mind, especially when you think about the kind of the stigma around, I mean, tech and development of being, very much of a male focused industry. And here you
Right.
are, somebody without the traditional education
Mm-hmm.
coming into it, you were working at a Barnes and Noble, and all of a sudden you have that kind of gusto to take this on. What was going through your mind? Because I love that kind of confidence, and I like to hear
Yeah. Well, it sounded a lot more confident than I felt in the moment.
that.
I had given up on jobs. I mean, that year was so hard, getting a graduate degree and then not being able to get a job at all. And the only reason I got hired was they were doing their big push for like holiday shoppers. They're
Yeah.
like, we need more staff for holiday shoppers. And I was lucky enough to get in the right time. But I had given up. I was so defeated and really low at the time. I have depression, and it was untreated at that time. And it was really rough. But one of my friends actually sent me the job posting, and she was like, this looks like something you could do. And I'm thinking, there's no way they'd hire me. I don't have the background, but hell, I'll apply. Why not?
Yeah.
And I got the interview, and I don't know. I mean, they took a big chance on me, and I I think I was just it was something that I loved. Like, it was a hobby that I loved, and I think that that showed.
Yeah.
And by just being able to start and prove myself, to myself, I got to prove myself to myself, but then
Yeah,
also
yeah,
to
for sure.
others. And it just went from there. I mean, that was the pivotal moment in my life, I feel like, career-wise.
Yeah. I mean, you and I have share similar experiences there because after grad school for me, I struggle finding a job. But,
Mhm.
and I go through that, went through that kind of that depression of not being able to find a job and having that. I have an MBA. Why am I not getting a job? Like, what
Yeah,
is it out there? And, when I got that opportunity at LCI and just ran with it, I get it. You're proving, not only are you proving to the world, you're proving to yourself that you can
right.
do this. And I think that, one thing we talk about at Abler is that our core values are grit, growth mindset, relationships, initiative, and trust. And I think you need that grit, and I think that's comes from these challenges, right? If
Yeah,
everything's given to you, sometimes it's hard to kind of get that grit. But that's amazing, you know. But one of the things you even getting into web development in the '90s, that's such a I mean, we forget that the internet it's only what 30 years old, right? Like to
yeah.
1993 that the web was the internet was available to us. But like as a young person, what was it that attracted you to this field?
Oh, I don't know that anybody's ever asked me that. It's such a good
Mm-hmm.
question. Uh, well, my dad was a systems administrator, and so I grew up in the 80s and 90s with computers in our house, and
Yeah,
I was always around it, and it was always fascinating. I always thought it was really cool, and so I think that my dad saw that in me and just thought like, hey, she might like this. And I'm an only child. At the time we lived kind of out in the sticks. It's not out in the sticks anymore. It's here right now. But at the time it was kind of far out. Not much to do. And so it was just something that I think he set me up with like an old work computer of his that like he didn't use anymore, and was just like, here, play with it. And it
yeah,
was fun. I mean, I got to like basically, this was pre MySpace. This is like GeoCities era.
yeah,
And I got to make like my own space on the internet. And
yeah.
like it was so fun. I was like, all of my interests are on this one page with animated GIFs and like, oh, how do I make the background orange? Like
Yeah.
learning little things like that. And it just went from there.
Do you remember the first thing you programmed or created?
Yes.
What was it?
It was an orange website. I loved my favorite colors at the time were orange and blue. So love the Abler branding because it kind of
Yeah.
foreshadowed. um, and I loved Nutrageous candy bars. So
Yes.
I had this like yellow and blue Nutrageous themed website. And it was
And
like
was it just for
all
you?
about, yeah, it was all about me, stuff I liked, who my friends were, that kind of thing.
Oh, how cool. How old were you?
I think I was 12.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you still have that site?
Oh no, I wish I did. That would be so cool. I've actually looked on the Internet Archive to see if I could find it. I have no idea what the website URL was, but I was trying to find like, I don't know. I was trying
Outrageous.
to just go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. Well, that's so cool. But like, so you went through this kind of, went from as a 12-year-old building these sites to, making your full-time career and really kind of, digging into accessibility. Like, what have been some of the, the firsthand, from your interactions with family members and just people in your life, like myself, you know the need for accessibility, but what are some of those challenges and barriers that you face when talking to people about why you need an accessible website?
I think one of the biggest barriers that I face when talking with people that don't have the lived experience is just they think that it's a special use case.
Yeah.
And so I think it's that attitude of people thinking, well, like you know, it's a nice to have. It's not a must have
Yeah.
feature. And so then, or they think like, oh, we can just use an accessibility overlay and make it accessible afterwards.
Yeah.
And, and we all know that doesn't work.
Didn't work. Nope. So I mean, are you seeing a shift in that attitudinal barriers, or like, are you seeing people changing, or what's like from the ground? What are you seeing?
I think so. I mean, I think that I've seen a shift, not a strong one, but I think it does. For as much as I dislike the whole overlay thing, I do think that one thing that they are doing a good job with is educating the public.
Mhm.
I actually saw an advertisement on TV for
Really?
these. Yeah,
Whoa.
yeah. And
Whoa.
it's like, wow, okay, well, at least they're making this a mainstream conversation, but not,
Wow.
I don't appreciate the way that it's implemented. So,
Yes, you're
but
right. You mean,
I think it's important. People need to know. And I think it's not an educational problem, but I think it's an information. The information isn't out there. People don't really understand how important it is and how it helps everybody. It's not just people with disabilities. It's not a niche need. It's everybody, because there's so many features we all use in everyday life that were originally intended for people with disabilities, but here we are, all of us using them regardless of, our own disability or not. You know,
yeah,
I use audio descriptions and subtitles on all of my shows
yeah,
because it helps me process it better.
right. Yeah, you're right. I mean, we talk about curb cuts. We talk about,
Yeah.
you know, even Siri and the home devices. All these things. It was all designed, and even the keyboard. It was so interesting. I read an article about all the different products that were just even the telephone. Right.
Cool.
It was
I didn't know
designed to
that.
help people with the deaf community to communicate,
Mhm.
right? Using the tonals. And it was like amazing
Oh
to hear
yeah.
that. So, when you think about it and all the different products that were created with people with disabilities in mind, then you realize that, hey, these products are benefiting every single person. But
Hmm.
uh, but again, it goes back to informational. I had to go and dig into that, but it's just not we just don't know that. It's not something we when we learn about, like, I don't even know if we learned about disabilities in school, because I mean, I didn't have any exposure. And but when I started digging in, and as I was trying to even build my own business, understanding what it is to be someone with a disability, what it is to support somebody with a disability, that's when you learn these things. But you're right. It goes back to what those overlay companies have done with a lot of their money, is that they're putting a lot of information out there, but we also have to make sure that they're putting out good information, but then it's also mixed in with that,
Yeah.
that
Like
misinformation.
it's
Yes.
not the right solution, but it is important.
Yes, that's correct. And
Yeah.
so, but I think, what you're doing at Unity is like you're building it from the foundation. So can you explain like that whole shift left concept of building accessibility into the foundation and why that's beneficial?
Yeah. I mean, it comes down to inclusivity. We're building a site from the beginning with everybody in mind. I mean, obviously with a business you have to have like an ideal audience, and you can't say
Yeah.
I'm selling to everybody.
Yeah.
But when I say everybody, I mean all different kinds of people. And the and their abilities and how they think and who they are and all of these things. And so when we're doing it from the ground up, we're thinking about the information architecture. We're
Mhm.
thinking about how content is organized on a page. Like, what is the flow of information from top to bottom? What's the outline like? We're also thinking about the design, the visual design. So we're looking at color contrasts. We're looking at making sure that there's affordance in the UX terminology world, of making sure that things that are clickable look clickable,
Yes.
and and all of those, like from the visual perspective of the design, but then also from the development of it, and making sure that if somebody can't see, what is the interface interaction like
Yeah.
how do people get around, and we're building all of that in from the beginning. And people have a misconception too that it's more expensive, And it's not. If it's done right, we have all of the tools set up already for our team to do these things. So it's not something that we have to go out of our way to then
Yeah.
incorporate. It's all there for us. It's our toolkit.
Yes.
So yeah.
Even with that, I think you were dabbling in creating accessible WordPress templates at one point, weren't you? Was that
We
something you were
are.
doing? Yeah.
Yes, we're actually working on that right now and making a release, like a WordPress plugin for the page builder called Beaver Builder.
Okay.
It's in the category with like Elementor and Divi and all of these different like WordPress page builders.
Yeah.
Beaver Builder has allowed us to we've found from a development perspective that Beaver Builder is pretty good user interface for the people that are building sites. But that also, from the code perspective, we've been able to develop accessible modules. So we're actually working on releasing a public, like a plugin to the public that will allow people to build accessible sites with Beaver Builder without
Oh,
having to use an overlay.
that is awesome. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. That's so cool. I recently just I have my own website now.
Yay.
Yay. So I got johngsamuel.com, and so go check it out. And it's but it was interesting to go through it because the team that was building it for me, accessibility wasn't something that they had done. They said we'll just put a plug-in. That was the initial, that was their first thing when they met me. And I was like, wait, and it was from the publisher. So they, the publisher has a team. And I was like, well, you guys don't even, you don't know anything about me. You got to understand this. And it was great because I worked with the team and they told me at the end, they said, this was the best site that we ever got to work on, because not only were they, creating this site that looked good and it was also accessible, it was something that they learned. Right. And that's where we go back to something I always talk about: proximity builds empathy, that exposure to people with lived experiences. And my hope is that the next time they build another site, they're going to be thinking about these best practices from the baseline. And so I remember they had given me some templates of WordPress templates that they typically use. And I had to go, I looked up on like, what are the best accessible templates? And I think I used the Icelandic. I don't know if you've seen that, Icelander or something, WordPress template.
Yeah, I think I've seen that before. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think I built it on that. That's what we used. And I think we may have even used it for the Abler website. But, it's kind of interesting to think about those templates. But what you're doing with the Beaver, what is it? Beaver Builder.
I'm not a fan of the name, but I like product.
No, that's super cool. When will this be released? When can we learn more about this?
We'll hopefully by the end of the year. I've got a lot of things on my plate right now. I've got another startup that I'm doing, and so there's a lot.
Oh my gosh! So, I know you have a podcast out. You're working with Jason and the Earfluence team, which are awesome and just super folks. But how has that whole experience been? And what is your goal for your podcast?
Oh, I felt really disconnected with the last 2 years of being in my house, and we got rid of our office space last fall too due to cash flow issues, and I was just looking for ways to connect with people again. So I started the podcast sort of as a how do I network? How do I reach out to people I don't know? And so this first season I've interviewed 9 people so far, cool. And we've released I think 5 episodes. Yours is next, whenever that one comes out. We are in the mid-season break right now. Just trying to get some marketing things under we need our feet under us,
Yeah.
But we're ready for these episodes to come out. But I mean, I love it. I love talking to people. I love hearing their stories. And just, I've had the opportunity to talk with people that I know this time around, but I'm hoping that the next season I get to just meet new people.
Yeah. I mean, that's a fun thing. We've been doing this show now for, I think it may be 2 years. I'm thinking, which is hard for me to believe. Maybe it's a year and a half. I don't know. But it's been quite a bit. And it's so interesting to, the conversations, how they've changed from the beginning. And I've been watching this show on YouTube called Hot Ones.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, it's the wing eating competition where they this gentleman, Sean, is asking these celebrities questions, and like the 10 hot questions with 10 hot wings or something. And
Yeah.
but he's such a great interviewer, and it's amazing because it's really interesting to hear how he connects with folks, and he does a lot of research before. But
Mhm.
you can tell I didn't do any research. I should have done more research. But
No,
you know
you asked
that
me great questions.
but those are the type of things I do. I find it fun to get to know people, and I'm excited to see, how season 2 and it progresses, because it is fun, and to get to know people. So,
Yes.
but what is, like, you have a lot going on your plate. So what are some things that you're working on that people need to know?
So the startup that I mentioned, actually, I'll plug that here. It's called Unit of Impact, and it is a collaboration between my company, Unity Web Agency, and 2 other certified B corporations. One is Round Peg in Maryland, and the
Okay.
other one is Oliver Russell in in Idaho.
Oh,
And so the 3 of us have come together, and we're building a impact tracking tool for small businesses to be able to track and report on their impact. So it'll have an interface for small businesses to keep track of their impact data. And then at the end of the year or the beginning of the next year, publish a report, an online impact report that they can share with their communities to show all of the great things that they've done in the previous year. So that's the big thing that's taking up a lot of my time right now, is working on this. We're going to be releasing the MVP soon, hopefully this fall, late summer,
fantastic.
early fall, and then we're going to be going after some funding.
That's fantastic. And so is there a site or anything that people can, learn more or sign up to learn more? Or how can people do
Um,
that?
yeah, well, probably the best way to find us is on LinkedIn, Unit of Impact. And then we do have a website. It's unitco.io.
Okay.
But it's an older landing page, and we're working on updating it. So you can sign up for a newsletter there, and keep an eye out for the new
Unit
things.
of
Our
Impact.
newsletter goes out every month, and we've got really great inspirational impact stories from around the world.
Awesome. And what about the podcast?
So the podcast is called Inside Impact, and I do have a website for that. It's insideimpactpodcast.com. And hopefully we'll be releasing episodes shortly, and the next one will be you, John.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
check it out. And Alisa, I'm so happy that you were able to join us today. And I wish we'd had a little bit more time to go into the B Corps, but maybe that's another conversation, because I know that's something you've been really passionate about, and it's so cool to hear about how you're working with others to make an impact. So, well, thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks with another interview. And I'll, of course, always have to thank Annie, who just does a great job of helping out. So thank you all, and we'll talk soon. Bye.